I'm here with Kay Johnson today. Kay leads our healing ministry here at Mile High Church, and probably once every 2 weeks at least, I talk to someone who has been inspired, experienced healing, or is just so grateful for the support that they get, Kay, from the many different programs and offerings that the healing ministry does at Mile High Church, both in person and online. So I just want to start with a thank you.
Well, thank you. I hope so. That's why we do it.
Yeah. That was my first question for you today, Kay, is the why. You're incredibly, I'm not here just to compliment you, but you're a brilliant minister, and you've focused on healing, and I'm just interested in hearing about why that resonates with you and why you've been called most to serve in that way.
Well, when I finished, first of all, the real beginning of all of it is the fact that the church has made such an impact on our own life, both my husband and myself. And so for that reason, both of us got very interested and involved early on. Terry served on the board. I also did. I sang in the choir. That's where I started. And by the way, if anybody's listening and thinks about that, the choir is a great place to start here because, first of all, you get a whole bunch of people that are ready to be your friends right away. And the second thing is you get to be on the big stage. It's so fun, especially for those of us who like that sort of thing. Anyway, so I also then, of course, took classes. My very first class was with Dr. Patty. And I remember when she told the story of her learning disability and explained it and how she worked so long to overcome it, but how difficult it was in her childhood. And then to understand that she had a number of master's degrees, I thought, this is amazing. This is so interesting. I want to learn this and I want to delve into this. So I started through the classes just like, most people do, is, Science of Mind 1, it was called then, and on and on. And then eventually went into practitioner training. And when I finished practitioner training, I thought, okay, now what? Where can I study? And there wasn't any place else except to go into ministerial school at the time. Not a lot of very different classes, new classes every year like we have now. And so I just signed up. And then I realized that I had to have a personal conversation with Dr. Roger about entering. And I thought, okay, what am I going to tell him? So when I got into this meeting with him, I said, I know you're going to ask me why I'm doing this. And I have to tell you, I don't know why I'm doing this. I really don't want to be a minister. I just want to keep studying. And he said to me, it's perfectly okay that you don't know what you're doing. Just go ahead and it will become clear. It'll be fine. And if at the end, if you don't want to be a minister, that's fine too. So it made it so easy. And so I just started in, and I loved it because I've always loved school. And finally, I'll get to why healing. In 2007, I got breast cancer. And I'm a person who just simply doesn't get sick. I just was so shocked by this event. And it really made me real. And the grandchildren, the only two grandchildren that we have, had just been born. They were like 6 months old. And I thought, man, this is not taking me anywhere except to heal. And I thought, well, I'm in this teaching. I am going to do everything I can think of to support my healing, as well as working in the medical community, which I also did. I did all the medical things that were recommended very typically at the time, not what I think they would do with me now if this happened. But never mind, that was the way it was then. So I did all of that, but I had a practitioner that I saw regularly. I said to my classmates, do you have any people that you think I should see? And they had energy workers or all kinds of woo-woo stuff. They'd give me names. I'd go off and see these people and try whatever they recommended, and found it all fascinating and supportive. And I also did some things that I think made a big difference. I decided I was not going to put cancer on my notebook because, of course, in those days, everything was given back to you in paper. No, that's not true. But you were given, every time you had your blood draw, they give you the papers, and every time you had papers and papers. So I had a notebook. So on the binder of the notebook, I put the word healing. Not. I wasn't going to put cancer on there. I didn't want it to think that every time I looked at it, and all of that was part of what we were talking about constantly, and learning how to understand as well as to teach. And so that whole experience sort of ended up being a journey of all kinds of activities and decisions that was fine. And then when I was done, I was done. And actually, I do have a funny story because you weren't here. I have to tell you this one. So in those days, and we were still in the vote center. We had built the sanctuary is being built, but it wasn't done yet. So what they did during the campaigns, the giving campaigns, was they would have people come and talk, and it was very strict. It was like 2.5 minutes. That was your story, and to inspire other people to give to the church and so forth. So Roger asked me to do that in the fall. And by this time, I was finished with all the radiation, but I was still wearing a wig. And I had worn a wig the whole time. I just didn't want my appearance to be so obvious that I was going through cancer. I was happy to tell anybody who knew, but that was the way I decided. So I had worn a wig through the whole thing. So I got up on the stage, and I had written my talk very precisely. But the first thing I said was, this has really been quite a year. And I took off my wig. And the place was packed, because it was always packed then. There were so many people. That's why we built the sanctuary. And it was dead quiet. And I've had so many people over the years come in and tell me that they remember that. And then at the end of it, I said, I don't even remember what this speech exactly was, but I just talked about how powerful science of mind was in my healing. And I also said I was not going to let go, because these grandchildren were the most important thing. And then Heidi brought both of them out. Larkin ran out, and Heidi was carrying Reed, and it was great. So that was fun, and so then I finished ministerial training, got all done, and the time came for us to decide if we were going to, petition to be a minister somewhere else. I didn't want to leave Mile High Church, but I also didn't want to be a full-time minister. Because, again, I had these grandchildren. And so I went to Roger and I said, could I just focus on healing and just be a part of that? Could it be kind of a special situation? And he said, well, yeah, let's just call it a focus. You just focus on healing. And I said, okay, good, that's great. I'll do that. I want to do a workshop. That's all I want to do. And so that's how it started. Now there, of course, are a number of focus ministers, and it gives a lot of flexibility to people who maybe, like I, didn't want to work full-time, or else it's people who have other jobs or whatever. It's turned into, I think, a wonderful possibility.
Well, it has, and the first thing, hearing your story is that there's some things that are really reflective of someone who's dedicated to spiritual living. And, I so admire, first of all, the desire to keep learning, that ongoing education in our lives, and how that drove you into ministerial school based upon not a call necessarily to serve in some great way, but to keep learning, to keep growing, maybe not knowing fully what the divine was preparing for you to do. I also love this idea of being open at the top, and so you've received this diagnosis, and as opposed to getting tunnel vision around it, I've got to go just this path. I'm open at the top, and although I'm going to have discernment and skepticism about some of what I may be experiencing in terms of an energy healer or someone doing a prayer for me, I'm open to it. And then that affirmative action of writing not cancer but healing on the notebook, really cultivating what you want to create an experience versus getting caught up in this is something that's happening to me. And so the first thing that I hear is just those qualities of someone who's committed to walking the spiritual path. And in our denomination of religious science, those are all super reflective. But what really hit me most in your sharing is that comment about real. This made this real. And I really admire that, because I think when we receive something like a diagnosis, or we have to face the fact that something could potentially get in the way of me being with my grandkids, that makes this stuff really real and moves it from the potentially superficial level of exploration to this is real everyday life. And I think that's part of what makes your ministry here so dynamic and makes so many of the people so inspired, is that you're helping them when things get really real in their lives, and it's time to put some of these principles and ideas into the pavement, because it becomes a matter of life or death, or sometimes how are we going to choose to die, with grace or in panic.
Yeah, there's no question I can't even imagine what that experience would have been like had we had not been here. Mm-hmm. And of course, Terry supported me all the way, because he came to church with me all the time too. Wasn't quite as dedicated to the classes, but he did take Science of Mind 1 for sure, and loved the ministers. And it was interesting. And I learned so much by all the places that those other people told me to visit, all the energy healers and so forth. I learned so much about which is so much more prominent now, which is this idea that's even coming through the medical community, that how you're thinking and how you're making choices and what you're saying all the time has an effect on your body. It simply does. And so, yeah.
And I've experienced a lot of the wonderful work that you've done, and you do this ministry with Linda Ringel, who is such an incredible person. And you're both cancer survivors. You're both in an ongoing way dedicated to your health. And one of the things I most admire is you've called it in different terms just diagnosed. But I love as a minister that I can talk to someone who's been just diagnosed, and I know all sorts of people who've been diagnosed with things, and I haven't walked that journey, thankfully myself, but it's so wonderful to have resources of people here who have walked a similar experience. And I can only imagine the amount of calls that you've received or emails from someone who is in a moment of probably quiet desperation, not understanding or having people understand what they're going through. And I'm sure that it's both a challenge and a blessing to be able to be there to support them in that time.
Yes, it is. It's a privilege, really, and it's been wonderful the way that the church has supported the kinds of things that we wanted to bring forth, that we thought were going to work and help in that regard, of which the support group really was where we started. We started with workshops. I mean, we did workshops, and people would come to the workshops and they'd say, well, we want to keep talking about this. And so then we ended up with the support group in person, of course, all the time for years and years.
And I'm sure there are stories of great blessing for everyone that gets engaged in the healing group, but I'm sure there are times where people have recovered from an illness, and I'm sure there are times where people have succumbed to their illness. And I'm interested to hear, based upon your experience of that, what has healing come to mean to you, or how has your understanding of healing evolved since you've been doing this ministry?
I think that really we are always healing our heart, healing our mind. That's the basis of all of it. Yes, the healing of the body, but the thing is, what's become so clear to me for years and years of talking about this and reading about it, and reading some of the newer medically trained people who have come to these same conclusions about how much what you are thinking, what you're talking about, what you are repeating to yourself, all of that has so much influence, is that healing is really understanding that there are these two places that just interact, and one doesn't interact without the other. I mean, our mind what's going on in our mind is always being reflected in the body, and the same thing. It can be the other way as well, and so so that connection is where I think healing happens for no matter what people are looking for. One thing that can happen, I'm not sure if this relates to your question, but it's come to me, so here it comes. One of the things that what becomes very obvious is people are very inclined when you say, "How are you?" to totally focus on what's not working. Not everybody, but a lot of times, especially if somebody knows that they happen to be ill. So then but you're so well acquainted with that. And I think what our teaching focuses on is get well acquainted where you want to go, where you want to be. Even if people have told you it's not possible, move that focus in your mind and in your heart and in the time you spend on it, in where it is you want to end up. What is it out of this that you want to experience?
I love that, and for me that would apply to healing in the sense of, no matter what the end result is, healing is doing our own work in relationship to where we want to go and who we want to be. And, I think one of the mistakes that I see people make in their healing journey is when, however we want to say it, when cancer does win, or when time wins, whatever that may be, that death or dying isn't a failure, that the failure may be in not fully living, even within the midst of the challenge that's going on. And I often say that with failure, which is probably the best thing that I can relate it to, which may sound strange, is I'm not afraid of failure, but I'm afraid of not trying. I'm afraid of not doing my best, and that's where I sometimes see people quietly suffer in a way, is that they don't listen to their intuition, right? Mm-hmm. Or they can only focus on the negative, as opposed to finding that resilience. And you kind of opened up sharing this way too, talking about someone like Dr. Patty, who's achieved great things in spite of having dyslexia. What we don't have to get into why this challenge is here, but now that it is here, how can I respond with resilience and towards that positive light? And I know that that's something that you offer to someone, because not only are you smart and not only do you have a spiritual consciousness, but you've really walked through this and come through the other side, creating much more of what you wanted for your life without any illusions either. Go ahead.
Well, I think resilience is a strong word. It's a wonderful word. It's a wonderful attribute that I certainly want to have. And I think that as we age and know that we are approaching eventually our death, it's getting closer and closer. Resilience is something that you really want to call on, because it's just yet another challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love Norman Lear, who died last year at 101. He has my favorite memoir title, which is "Even This I Get to Experience." And I think there's something strong about that. One of the things that you discovered that I wanted to talk with you about today, Kay, in your Open at the Top way, was something that we're now calling, I think, our healing intention circles here at Mile High Church. And we're going to be doing more and more of those here because we find them so powerful and people resonate with them so much. But I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about your journey of discovering of these, what they are, and how they may improve the life of someone who's seeking healing as a part of Mile High Church.
Sure. Yeah, this has been a very favorite experience that I was blessed to have simply because of being here. I had started my acquaintance with the author Lynn McTaggart, who wrote a pretty great book called The Field. And what she did in that, she was not a scientist and she was not a spiritual teacher. She was really a newspaper person. She was a writer. And but she and her husband had developed a pamphlet or a monthly magazine called What Doctors Don't Tell You. I mean, this was way back in the 90s. So she was kind of ahead of her time. I never saw this document, but they would be exploring all kinds of alternative healing methods. Anyway, she got very interested in the quantum physicists, and so she wrote this book from more of a layman's understanding, which is why I got involved in it, and explained all of the kind of research that they were doing. And then at the end, she made some kind of statement that I'm going to try to quote, sort of, in the idea that as opposed to proving that there is no God, proved that in fact there is something there that is available, and that the quantum physicists, she maintained, getting closer and closer to what spiritual teachers were teaching. And I've always wanted to know if Ernest Holmes ever met Einstein. I mean, Einstein was in the United States during the 30s and 40s, so he surely could have. But I never could find anything when I asked the archives people to look at it and see if they could ever see that they were at a conference at the same time or anything like that. But it feels to me like Ernest Holmes had to be very much aware of some of that research that was going on, because it was talking about the energy that is everywhere, and we talk about that spirit is everywhere. So anyway, then I followed Lynn McTaggart's work, and she was doing writing a series of books. Mostly she just gave talks, and then she would have one of her things that she did many times was with the people in her audience. She would be maybe in England having this talk, because that's where they live, is in England. But she was in conjunction with some researchers in Arizona, and they would have two sets of seeds. And then she would have her audience. She would teach them how to do a powerful intention. She would give them a process for how to do that, the words to use, and then she would put them in sort of a meditative state, and they would send this powerful intention to one of these sets of seeds and see if they would grow. And then this other set that they would ignore. And many times, not absolutely every single time, but most of the time, there was always a scientific recordable difference. And so then she started moving on into moving with groups. And that's when she started experimenting with having small groups do powerful intentions for members of their group. She even did that for several years before she finally decided to write the book. And that book was called Power of Eight. And again, it was just popped in her head. Eight's a great number. Doesn't have to be 8. Can be 6, can be 7, can be 9. 8 is a good manageable number of people because everybody eventually speaks, and so it takes time. So I knew that book was coming out, and Sounds True, which is a publishing company in Boulder, and had a great connection with Karen Thomas here, who runs the speaker series, because they were often a funnel for speakers for us. Mm-hmm. And Karen had arranged for Lynn McTaggart was going to actually kick off this book, Power of Eight, here at Mile High Church. This was in 2017. And so the people in Boulder, the Sounds True people, no, it wasn't Sounds True. I think it was Gaia.
Okay.
No, I can't remember.
It could be Gaia or Sounds True.
It was one or the other.
Yeah.
They're both good places. Anyway, they called us. They called Karen and said, look, we need people. We want to do this videotaping, and we need people. Could you send us some people? This was August, not the best time to be recruiting people. But, of course, she called me, and I said, oh, yeah, we can do this. Tell how many people do you want? I want 8 on Monday and 8 on Tuesday. Okay, great. So we shuffled around, Linda and I shuffled around, found people that were excited to come, and we and then at the last minute, like Monday morning, they called and said, oh, don't come on Monday because something was wrong with the cameras. They weren't set up. And I so disappointed. And then Lynn McTaggart said, no, tell those people to come anyway. I will get a room in the hotel and I will work with them individually as a group. And so the 8 of us went up there. It was Linda, Linda's husband, Karen's husband. I went. There were 2 or 3 other people. And we spent like 3 hours with her, basically a personal training session. And I knew at the time, I thought, we have to do this. So I need a sign-up sheet when she talks. I'm very big on sign-up sheets. and so then that was great. I also went back on Tuesday and participated in that Power of 8 group as well. And then she came that Friday and launched the book here at Mile High. There were 300-400 people that came to that talk. And she actually had them form circles. She talked way too long and didn't get to it. I just kept thinking, do it, just do it, so people can experience it. Anyway, but she finally did. She just had people stand up and find a group, which people did. And when it was over, she said, does anybody want to talk about the experience? And sure enough, there was somebody who said, I have all this pain. I cannot bend my knees. And so let me show you. And this person bends down way on their knees. 2 or 3 people spoke that day. So that's where it started. So then I encouraged everybody to sign up the sheet. And then we started holding these once a month. We would hold them actually on Wednesday before we had the Wednesday night services in those days. And we would do it just before that. So people would come to that and then they would stay for the service. And one of the things I always want to tell people, because when you come and do the circle, not everybody gets to be a receiver because you just don't have enough time. Even so, we try to do this for a couple hours, but even then you can really only do probably 3 times. So other people don't get to be the receiver. But I can tell you that Monday afternoon that we were in Boulder with her, the person who had the most dramatic healing was never the receiver. He was one of the senders every time. And he called me and told me what was happening to him. He was a Vietnam vet. He'd been in the Agent Orange stuff. I mean, he had a total letting go of the hatred, resentment of that whole experience. He was like a different person. He was like Mr. Joyful. It was really quite fascinating. So much so that when Lynn put out the paper copy of her book maybe 2 years later, she added an addendum, and that whole story is in the addendum of us going up there and of this person that had that amazing experience. So I have yet to do this and not have somebody come and say, this was amazing. I felt the energy. I felt the love of the people in my circle, or I felt an energy that I don't even know what it was exactly. And so we just set it up and lead them through and let it happen.
I think they're great, and being a part of a couple, generally working with someone who's just received, a major diagnosis, so it's a time where of some discomfort or fear. There's something incredibly intimate about the experience that's just really honest and true. And what I really like about it is it's very communal. Sometimes, just like with religion, healing modalities can involve one individual who's kind of the healer, and they place hands or whatever it is, and they can heal someone. And I'm not putting that down, but the consequence, the shadow side of that is that power dynamic where someone's looking to someone to heal them. And as we know, sometimes, and I say this as a man that, in particular, there can be that misuse of that power or manipulation. And what I love about the work that you're doing, not only the pragmatism that you do it, is that everyone's a part of it. Everyone's a part of the intention. The healer and the healed, there's no difference. And there's groups, and you're watching each other. And so there's something that I think that's really, I don't know if safe is the word, but I'll use that word, sanctuary, and sacred about it, that I really like a lot. So I'm really pleased that we're doing it here at Mile High, and that it's under your leadership, and that it's something, people don't have to have an illness to come in. They have no idea what might happen for them to participate in, and make a real human connection with other people who are all sharing in the same intention.
Yes, and that definitely happens. And people are often attracted to it just because they heard about it and something really dramatic has happened to them, and they think, well, I'm just going to show up and see what happens. But it doesn't have to be a physical healing. It can be it can be a relationship that just needs to heal, and I don't know what to do, and it's just there's so much rancor, that kind of thing, or anything. I need a job. I need a place to live. Those are the kinds of things, and it has a very similar feel, I think, to a Christian prayer group, but it has its difference because it's based on science of mind, which is that we all have the access to the divine spirit. We all have access. We all touch into that power, and together we can do that for each other and for ourselves. So,
well, I love that. And I think that's the whole exploration of the science of mind. And you put it so well earlier, in that our mind has a relationship to our body, and our body has a relationship to our mind. And science continues to explore what that relationship is and how it shows up to our lives. And more, it's proving that relationship. And yet, part of the spiritual aspect is opening up to the possibility that amazing things can happen, when we bring immense intentionality to our physical well-being and take care of our bodies for our mental well-being as well. So there's something, sacred but really pragmatic, I think, about it too, which is really exciting. And I appreciate you, Kay, sharing about it today. And you just did one of these a few weeks ago, and it was so popular that we're adding some more of these opportunities to the calendar. And so people can go on our website, milehighchurch.org, and learn about the healing ministry and all that you offer. Or I'm sure they can just email you, K, just the letter K, Johnson at milehighchurch.org, and you can get them more information as well. And on behalf of people who've received great healing because of the environment that you've created and the yeses that you give. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we really appreciate you. Anything else that you'd like to say today before we close?
Well, I think I think the credit and the honor goes to the teaching. It really does. I mean, certainly it's inspired me, and certainly and Linda as well. Linda is such a model of this, because she is such a practitioner of everything mental and physical in order to complete her, to do the work that she does, which is great. And besides, it's fun to work together. It just is fun to have somebody to work with. So I think that's where That's where the emphasis is, for sure. And really, it's a privilege and an honor to work with people and to do this. And it's also a privilege to be at Mile High Church, and I know it.
We're
Thank
glad to
you.
have you. And it's another thing that impresses me about you and so many of our ministers here is it's not about you. It's and one of the great gifts that you have is you have your own skill and quality, but you have this great ability of seeing possibilities in others and nurturing them and giving them the space to come in and play and be engaged. And so I really admire that, and that shows in the quality of the healing ministry, the way you engage the other ministers, practitioners, lay folks, just people who have some expertise and some heart, and I think that's part of what brings its vibrancy. So we invite people to get involved, whether you've been diagnosed with something or you've been diagnosed with this thing called life, to get engaged in this wonderful healing ministry. And thank you so much for Kay, and I hope everyone got to know you a little bit better through this too.